I have a soft spot for animals. Who doesn't, right? As far back as I can remember, my attachment to animals has defined my life. From bringing home stray cats and wounded birds to volunteering at the local shelter, it's been a journey. Every journey has its challenges. That's a weird way for me to accept what happened, but it's the best I've got. If I think about the encounter for too long, I get scared again. I start to wonder if maybe there are animals out there who don't deserve my sympathy. It makes me wonder if my soft spot is misplaced. It was a few years ago now, I mentioned it already, but I was volunteering at the local dog shelter. Animals needed cleaned, cared for, fed, and entertained. That was my job. I loved it. Things were strange around that time though. Throughout the week leading up to my encounter, we'd notice things. A trash can was tipped over one night. A window was broken. The back door was deeply scratched, as if by a knife or an axe of some kind. We couldn't imagine a reason for someone to want to break into the shelter, but we couldn't figure out what else could be causing the destruction. Since it was escalating, we knew we needed to get to the bottom of it. Unfortunately for us, the police weren't willing to spend their nights parked outside of the shelter. They had more important business to attend to. I don't say that bitterly either. I believed them. I wish I had been attending to something else that night too. Instead, I was there when the beast came knocking. We were rotating volunteers through an overnight security role. One of us, we figured, would discover what was happening outside of our building. We'd call the police, and then everything would be taken care of. If trouble was a lottery, I was the lucky soul who hit the jackpot. At about 11:30, I heard one of the metal garbage cans crash to the pavement. I heard the aluminum drone of it rolling across our parking lot. Great, I thought. Cleaning up all of that trash felt like it would be the worst part of my night. Then I looked outside, through the small window that we'd repaired earlier in the week, and I saw something terrible. The flicker of our parking lot lights revealed the creature in short bursts. The size stood out immediately. Even on all fours, its head was as tall as my car in the lot. It looked sick. I think it was covered in fur once, but it was almost naked now. Scabs and sores covered its emaciated body. It moved like a dog or a bear, except for the head full of pointed teeth that hung from its shoulders. It swayed its head from side to side, sweeping the parking lot like a bull searching for a patch of grass. I don't know what this thing was looking for. I know when I gasped, it heard me, and suddenly, it was looking for me. It ran toward the window first. I heard its clawed feet scraping the pavement. Then it turned away. It must have remembered that the window was too small. There was no point in breaking it again. Instead, it crashed into the back door. I called the police immediately. I called the thing a bear to avoid any extra questions. They said they'd be on site soon with animal control beside them. They couldn't come soon enough. The monster was barking and yipping. Its cries were deep and wet, like its throat was filled with phlegm. All the while, it clawed at the door. I listened as the grooves got deeper. I listened as it slammed its body weight into the frame and threatened to buckle the entire wall. The dogs in their cages were howling. They were trying to escape, furiously chewing at the chains and hinges that kept them in place. I understood how they felt. I wanted to escape too, but I had nowhere to go. So I stood and I waited. I shuddered in sweat through my clothes. All the while, the door got thinner. I knew sooner or later it would give. It would break in half, and the monster would come barreling through, squeezing its broad, bony shoulders through the narrow opening. It would chase me through the shelter. The chase would be over quick. Then I'd be the meat stuck between its teeth. Those few minutes felt like a lifetime. Soon, I couldn't distinguish between the sounds of my own wailing and the wails of the dogs around me. Each claw that scraped the door felt like it was scraping my bones. Then came the sirens, the flashing lights. The nearer they drew, the more the presence of the beast faded. First, the scratching stopped, then the growling. Then I knew it had turned and run away. The police came through that same door. They only needed to push it once to break through it. That's how close I was to being that monster's dinner. Animal control fanned out and searched the area. They knew based on the damage to the outside of the building that something had been there and had tried to get in. But there were no signs of the beast beyond the parking lot. I told the police what I saw. I explained that it wasn't an animal I knew. They said exactly what I predicted. It was a bear. It was a sick, confused bear. I've never known of an animal to pursue a human meal to such great lengths. I've never known a bear to saw through a door just to capture someone. But I was grateful to be alive. Too grateful to complain or to ask questions. I stopped working at that shelter, and the monster stopped coming too. Both of us were shaken by that night, I guess. I was hoping that you could answer something for me. Before that night, what was it after? Why was it trying to break into our shelter in the first place? Did it know about the dogs inside? Was it hoping to get in? I've been chasing something all my life. I think it's approval. Maybe I'm wrong. I think it's my own approval, actually. I think I'm searching for an excuse to tell myself I've done a good job. I'm searching for a way to believe it. Maybe. That chase led me to a career in the military. In my 20s, it just made sense. What other job would give me the sense of pride that I was looking for? Thank you for your service. I liked hearing it. It might have been the wrong reason to join up, but I know I did some good while I was there. I did some bad too, I think, and that's the story I want to tell. I want to talk about one of the bad nights. I was out in Nevada. You can guess where. I don't think I have to tell you. It's better for everyone if I don't spell it out anyway. On that particular day, I was escorting a convoy from Las Vegas to Groom Lake. We weren't doing anything special. There was a recruitment push happening in the city, and the presence of our vehicles made things look more legit. On the way back to Groom Lake, as the neon lights faded beneath us, we cut our path underneath a dark, blank sky. Something appeared. Something came for us. I'd been chasing something all my life. Remember? That night, something wanted to chase me. The sky was barren. Like I said, there was still too much light pollution from the city for us to see the stars. There was a haze of purple and green hues between us and the heavens. The faint glow of that pollution was at least enough to light our way. It gave us a general overview of our surroundings, while our headlights revealed the road. Then it all disappeared. It all went black. We were a team of 5 vehicles, and one by one, our headlights began to flicker. They never shut off completely, but it had become apparent to all of us that we'd crossed the threshold that we couldn't see. Something was interfering with the lights. As our convoy blinked in and out of view, the haze overhead was swallowed whole. It was replaced by a pitch-black sky, impenetrable, darker than black, really, like it was a combination of colors so deep that our eyes couldn't reach it. We stopped moving. A few of us jumped out, myself included. When we looked up, we realized that the darkness overhead was a passing cloud or an astral body. It was humming. We could feel it in our bones. It was a ship of some kind. No lights, no engines that we could see, and it was just idling above us. The electric hum in our bones made the hairs on our arms stand upright. We weren't equipped for something like this. not physically or mentally. Until that moment, I thought I had been a part of something big. Thank you for your service. It didn't get bigger than the US military. I was wrong. There was something much bigger than us. And that night, it was right overhead. It was the magnifying glass of the cosmos as far as I was concerned. We were the ants about to get burned. We jumped back in our vehicles and drove as quickly as we could. Silently, effortlessly. It followed. I'd never seen anything move like that. It glided through the sky like a shark might glide through water. The men were yelling. I was too, I'm sure. I don't know what we had to say. We were 15 minutes out from the base. We thought surely the thing above us had been picked up by our peers. We were confident that it would be chased away in the next few seconds. The cavalry never came. Instead, we felt it closing in. We felt the structure overhead getting closer. As it chased us, it crept nearer to the ground. We were expecting to hear the metal form crash against the roofs of our vehicles. We thought we'd be smashed by the giant black slate. We were sweating, screaming, crying, I'm sure. Then we could see it, the base. We saw the lights and the posted guards, the security on the perimeter, and the man that would let us through the gate. We watched them leap to action. The base came alive like a sleeping dragon, disturbed by some tiny thief. But still, the support didn't come. When we looked up to see why they hadn't opened fire on the ship overhead, we realized that it was gone. It had completely disappeared, changed course, and soared away without a single change in the atmosphere. We didn't hear it move. We didn't feel it. The electric hum was still inside of us, maybe kept alive only by our fear. We recounted the story to our superiors immediately, of course. They had picked up nothing. They'd seen nothing. And now, we had no proof of our encounter. I didn't believe them. They had to have known. How could they have missed it? A few of us lashed out, tried to argue. We were passionately shut down and directed to keep our mouths shut. And unless we were alone, with a few drinks around the table, none of us talked about that ship. I left the military some time ago. It never gave me that thing I was chasing. Lately, I've been wondering if it's because of that lie. If it's because I didn't report what we saw. I didn't tell the public. How many others shared our experience and were made to look crazy? If I'm letting my friends and neighbors deal with that alone, am I really serving them? I know we didn't imagine it. I hope by sharing this story that someone else will realize the same thing. Maybe they've shut you up, but that doesn't mean you're crazy. That doesn't mean you're alone. They are out there. We've seen them. I tried living off the grid for a while. I always loved nature, you know. I even worked with the Park Service for a few years. I thought I was built for the outdoors. I thought I'd be more at home, off in the seclusion somewhere, with only the land and the sky as my neighbors. Since I'm telling the story, I bet you've guessed it. I was wrong. Other things live out there. You see, things that I never thought about meeting. Things I didn't realize I'd have to fight to survive. I ordered the cabin in pieces, hauled it off to the woods, and assembled it by myself. Those first few weeks went by without so much as a bump in the road. I told myself I'd found peace. Wrong again. The knocking started around week 6. It wasn't at my front door, mind you. It was somewhere off in the trees, somewhere that I couldn't see. It came at dusk, dinner time. I remember the fork trembling in my hands as I froze mid-bite, listening to that knock in the woods. There was a pattern to it, something intelligent. It wasn't the wind blowing a branch against the trunk of a tree. It was intentional. It felt like some unintelligible version of Morse code had drifted through my window. It was the language of something else, a dialect not designed by mankind. It made my skin crawl. I searched the perimeter that night with a torch in my hand. I found nothing, just the usual signs of animal tracks. Maybe if I had stayed out there longer, or looked a little harder, maybe I would have found a reason to run away. Lord knows I should have. The knocking continued. It came the next night, again at dusk. This time, I wasn't eating. I was expecting it. I ran in the direction of the sound, determined to find whoever it was that was tormenting me. It had to be a man, I told myself. It had to be someone poking fun at the stranger in the cabin. When I got close, the sound stopped. I saw a flash of something large and furry, ducking between the trees. It moved too fast for me to tell what it was. A deer, I thought. Maybe a bear. I didn't know how long the fur was. I was debating how large it really could have been. When I saw that hairy shape cutting across the foliage, I stopped in my tracks. Regardless of what it was, the animal wasn't what I was looking for, and I didn't need to make an enemy of a territorial predator. It vanished. The next night, no knocks. But in the morning, there was a stone in front of my door. It was a boulder, really. Too large for me to wrap my arms around, and far too heavy for me to move on my own. Judging by the mud splattered around it, the stone had been tossed there. Something had picked it up, hauled it over, and slammed it into the earth. I couldn't believe I hadn't heard it. I was too relieved that the knocking hadn't returned. I guess a wet thud wasn't enough to wake me from my slumber. I wish it had been. Again, I find myself wishing that I had seen the truth. My little cabin beyond society might have been peaceful, but it wasn't exactly safe. Off the grid meant beyond the safety net, and safety was something I needed in my immediate future. Dusk. It always came at dusk. There was a loud crash as another stone hit the side of my wooden home. It was the size of a softball. I saw it the moment I went to the window, laying there on the ground. Then I saw the second one coming. It shattered the glass pane and only barely missed my head. Glass crunched under my boots as I hurried to find my rifle. Another stone hit the cabin in the meantime. When I got outside, I saw it. Its arm was cranked back, another heavy stone in its palm. It stood like a major league pitcher, at about 3 times the size. It was human-like. That made me slow to look down from the sights of my gun, like a massive man covered in a brown sheep-like fur. I'd never seen anything like it. When I raised the rifle, the stone hit my shoulder. I screamed, swerved, and fired into the air. Hit nothing. When I landed on the ground, not far from the boulder outside my door, I realized how perilous my situation really was. I couldn't bring the gun back up. I could barely drag myself into a sitting position. My shoulder was too hurt. I'd learn later that my collarbone was broken. I looked for the giant man in the woods, expecting to see another stone trained on my position. I knew it wouldn't hesitate to bludgeon me into the earth. It would erase me right there, press me flat until I was just a stain on the dirt. But the beast was gone. No one was standing among those trees. The roar of the gunshot must have scared it. It must have thought the weapon was too much of a risk. I'm lucky the thing didn't stick around to assess just how damaged I already was. It thought I'd have more fight in me. I tell myself I would have survived either way. Deep down, I know I got lucky. It wasn't easy getting back to a hospital, giving up the cabin. It wasn't easy telling the story at first. I've accepted it now, though. The truth is, no one is ever going to believe me. You don't believe me now, do you? But I can't help myself. My shoulder still aches when it rains. The hair on my neck still stands up when the sun starts to set. The story might be hard to swallow, but it's harder not to tell it.